Introducing Huawei MateBook X Pro, winner of 27 global awards that now comes with Windows Hello. Unlock your Huawei MateBook X Pro with a touch of your fingerprint. Secure, fast, and no password to remember. For a limited time, get a free $300 gift card with purchase. Visit a Microsoft store near you today. All right, we are here and it is live. 5 cameras on the LG V40, 3 phones with up to 3 cameras on the Galaxy S10. Has progress in the mobile technology industry just become, well, a very simple numbers game? We don't have any idea what to look forward to anymore as we head into the fall and into next year with the 2 chaebols, but we'll talk it out. Plus, Apple is flittering like a butterfly over its MacBook keyboards. And hey, can someone in IT check out what's wrong with ASUS's website here? Thanks. That and all the news from this week in mobile technology on this episode 311 of the Pocketnow Weekly, recorded live at June 29 at noon Eastern. This is the podcast that talks about everything in mobile technology, from smartphones to tablets to smartwatches and everything in between. It's all the stuff that you wished for as a kid. My name's Jules Wong, news editor here at Pocketnow, and I'm joined by our very own editor-in-chief, Anton Dinaj. What's it going there in Romania, Tony?
Thank you, Jules. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's been a while since I've been here, and it's good to be here. Everything is fine and dandy, and I can't wait to share some thoughts on those cameras, because there are quite a few cameras.
Too many, and maybe too little. I don't know. We had that light L16 once that had like 16 of those things on the back. It was very weird. But yeah, this is going to be the most that a major OEM has put out. Talking about that in just a few short minutes. In the meantime, we would like your there on social medias. You can put your comments through with the hashtag PN Weekly on Twitter, and we'll be able to track those live. I got my phones over here ready to go to read out your queries, questions. And in the off times between now and maybe the next show, we'll be answering your emails too, if we can get to them. And that would be at podcast@pocketnow.com. Again, if you can't stay live on the show for now, then you can just put those questions in later and we'll be able to answer them. So
hopefully
get them in on whichever means that you would like to go through. I would like to start off this week with the Galaxy S10. I know that we've been talking about the Note 9, how there's going to be an event on August 9th. We're going to be there, but until there's actually more news to report on that, because just having an event isn't really enough for us to talk about it in depth, I want to talk about 2019, about the Galaxy.
But before you do you mind telling our readers how they can win an HP NVX2?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I slide this in something. Didn't even freaking, oh man. And I wrote the piece too, so it's like, man, I should know better. Anyways, we have an HP NVX2 to give away. It's one of the always connected PCs that Qualcomm and Microsoft have teamed up to give. And all you have to do, and I'm going to have to edit this, the post on the rundown here in just after the show, I guess. But I'm going to put in a link for you to participate in this giveaway. It runs through July 4th, 11:59:59 Eastern Time. And all you have to do is comment on, I believe it's Adam Z. Lane's review of the HP NVX2. It has some flaws, it has some advantages. We want you to talk about how, which features that you like, and also where in perhaps you came from. And if you heard about this giveaway on the podcast, we'll just say you heard it from the podcast. So,
and we apologize for our international readers or listeners. This is going to be a US only giveaway. It's beyond our control. This is how we can do it. This is how we will do it. But we will have some other giveaways coming really, really soon to Pocketnow, which hopefully will be international. So apologies if you are outside of the US and you cannot participate. You can participate, but you will be disqualified, sadly.
Yeah, and I mean, we handshook on the agreements. We have to honor them, but hopefully we will be able to expand our reach in just a little bit. So Back to the Galaxy S10. Apparently, we're going to get three of these things, not two, three. And the recent rumors have been kind of iffy about the sizes of these phones going into 2019. Uh, one of them says that we could be dealing with two 5.8-inch sizes and a 6.2. Very familiar sizes if you know what the Galaxy Note or that this year's Galaxy S9. But another one saying, "Oh, it's going to be 5 inches here, five, maybe 6 inches here, and 6.5 inches there." And also, oh yeah, why not just have the entry level is going to be one camera. There's going to be a mid level with two cameras, and then three cameras for the Pro. And I'm wondering what this present a dilemma in terms of consumer choice, in terms of what Samsung wants to achieve, and in terms of just being able to, juggle the demand in terms of, okay, let's forecast which ones should get the most supply. Like, what do you think?
I think we're talking about a flagship, and since we're going to talk about a 2019 flagship, I think that the market is pretty much set in terms of what we should expect, what the expectations are. This year, we'll with the Huawei P20 and a P20 Pro, with the LG V35, with the Q7, and even with the upcoming Note 9. I mean, for a 2019 flagship, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense to have three Galaxy S9s, because it really doesn't. It will be basically cannibalizing each other. But I really do think that a single camera Galaxy S9 would make little to no sense. Most of the flagships out there, all of the flagships out there, have at least two cameras. Going three makes sense if that third camera is not a gimmick and is actually useful. And we can go into details on how Huawei is doing things. But I don't think that having a Galaxy S9, even if it's a zero or a budget version with a single camera, would make sense for Samsung as a business, since we are going to talk about a flagship phone which defines the entire strategy for Samsung all the way through the end of 2019 and the Galaxy Note 10. So I really think that that particular budget variant will end up being either a Galaxy A, Galaxy Y, or Galaxy something else. And the S will be, as we know it today, a two-phone version, a two-phone move, with the basic Galaxy S9 having a dual camera setup, and maybe the S9 Plus trying to tackle or to beat the standard which Huawei has set back in March. I think it was in March in Paris with the P20 Pro. So that, long story short, I think that it's going to be a two-version thing, and that third lower option single camera variant will end up being some sort of other Galaxy. Those are my 2 cents.
I think that's definitely a fair assessment of this. We've seen how a brand can spread its flagship brand too thin. We saw that 2012 with the HTC One series. It was the initial spread there with the 1S, 1X. There was another one that I forget.
There were 3. Yep.
Yeah, but there were 3 of them, and
yes,
it was kind of weird to see all that, and no one really knew what was going on with those. I think maybe with Samsung, where it has more of that presence all around the world at the carriers too, that you get the hands-on time. Maybe they think they might be able to convert more people with 3 options that are under that very well-known Galaxy S line. But again, I'm not sure. Maybe it's going to be another one of those J things, or another one of those A's or something.
Exactly my thoughts, because the Galaxy brand, and ever since Samsung has started pushing the Galaxy brand real hard 3-4 years ago, the Galaxy brand has become very much diluted. There's Galaxy S, which is the flagship. There's the Galaxy Note, which is the full flagship and the niche product. And then there's a ton of other Galaxies. From the A to the Y, you name them, I can keep counting them. I think introducing more fragmentation within the segment, within the Galaxy S segment, will hurt the business. Probably not immediately, because let's be honest, whatever Samsung is going to put out there, it's going to sell like hotcakes, like millions, just like with Apple. And it's good that they have such a good brand recognition and brand loyalty, but I don't think that this is really what they want to do. They want to keep up with the competition, if if possible, they can try at least to leapfrog them. And right now we have 2 Huawei P20s. We will have 2 iPhones, or maybe even 3, who knows, but those don't compete with the Galaxy S lineup. So in my mind, it just makes sense to go with the tradition of having 2 S phones, and that's it.
I think we have your coverage on Pocketnow already of what the P20 offered for you. But just to, go over what you thought of that triple camera thing was all about for you.
I
Because
am
we already know that Adam Lane has his thoughts on it.
Yeah, even before I actually published my review, so from the minute I laid my hands on the Huawei P20 Pro, I was in love, not with the phone per se, but with its multimedia capabilities. When I'm not managing the team, I'm an avid multimedia consumer. I watch a lot of movies, I listen to a lot of music, and I'm not even going to talk about the speakers, which I think they're really good. The camera on the P20 Pro is so good, in my opinion. It could be worse in your opinion. It could be worse in some other people's opinions. I've heard them go both ways. Some people praise it. Some people say it's not a huge thing. For my personal needs, for what I use my camera on my smartphone for, the P20 Pro offers me something that I haven't had the chance of using since the Lumia 1020, or in general since the good old Nokia Lumia lineup. I think that regardless of the scenarios in which I'm shooting in, let it be handheld, let it be low light, let it be portrait, let it be food or anything else, it just delivers the type of results that I expect from a smartphone on which I know I can depend. Before that, I was a huge fan of the Apple iPhone 10 because of the same reasons. I know the Google Pixel is way beyond the iPhone. I can say, yes, you are right, but I haven't had the chance of using the Google Pixel because here in my region it's not available. So it's safe to say that the P20 Pro became, and it's right here with this, let me take off the case, which is really ugly, and I wouldn't be using a case if it weren't this option, this version, but I have to just make it uglier. It became my go-to phone, and I haven't put it down ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Renato Laporte with the hashtag PN Weekly. Well, Huawei/Honor knows everything about fragmentation. Would you believe it? And it seems to work for them. I mean, I guess they're coming from a different culture. Chinese is more spec driven, and they're more kind of a mob kind of going
Yes,
around it. But I
but
don't know how this
still,
translates worldwide, though.
if you come to look at it, if you take a step back, I'm not sure who commented, so I'm sorry for not shouting out your name. If you take a step back and you look at the big picture, Huawei is just as fragmented as Samsung is when it comes to spreading out the number of models that they have. They have low end, they have mid range, they have high end phones. Just like Samsung has the Galaxy A's and the Y's and the rest, Huawei has the Lite, has the regular, and has the Pro. So within the family of the products, there is no fragmentation. You will not see 3 flagships. You will see probably 2 flagships, the P20 and the P20 Pro, the P10 and the P10 and the Mate 10 Pro. And it can go for a long time, the storytelling. But what I'm saying is there are models which are low end, there are models which are mid range, and there are flagship phones. And that, I think, is what Samsung is going to do with that particular zero level low end Galaxy.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
In terms of flagship kind of fragmentation, maybe that will be the case, and hopefully we'll get a cleaner look to all of this. Again, months to go on this story, so we'll keep track of it because we can. I want to transition here with this tweet from Andrew Wallace. Greetings, hashtag PN Weekly. I am excited to see if LG basically combines all the major implementations of second cameras, from wide angle to monochrome, depth info, telephoto, large sensor, all the stuff. So that gives us a chance to talk about the LG V40, where sources are talking about this monster of a fall-time phone with 5 cameras. And I feel like the whole 5 cameras headline has been kind of overplayed a little bit because we've seen dual front facing cameras before. It's mostly from LG, actually, and we've also seen, well, it's kind of we're talking about it, I guess, triple camera setups at the back. So I mean, that kind of sort of makes sense if you want to drive home a very premium product. In terms of the front, we got what supposedly might be a stereoscopic facial recognition feature where the two cameras are just taking different images and basically matching that to the data that it has stored within. And then there's also the second aspect of that, which is the back. LG is known for its wide angle take on the second camera. We don't know what it'll do for the third one. So I guess, first of all, what do you think, Tony, of that third sensor? Maybe just free blowing in the wind. Go ahead.
So first of all, let me try to take a bird's eye view on this entire thing. I'm okay with having multiple cameras. I'm okay with having 4 or 5 cameras on a smartphone if the added number of cameras is beyond a gimmick, if it's actually useful. There's a very thin line which manufacturers have to play or obey, or there's a red line, if you will, which they cannot cross. The more cameras you add, the more expensive your phone will be. But still, if you are willing to take that bet and release a flagship phone, which will be more expensive because of the added 1 or 2 cameras, you better make sure that those cameras are bringing value to your customers. You better make sure that people will find the added camera useful beyond bragging rights, beyond the fact that you will probably use them once or twice in your lifetime and then just show it off at a bar or at a birthday party. So if they're useful, I'm okay with that. And now going into specifics, yes, LG can have the liberty of attacking or tackling the face recognition topic the way they want to. I mean, Apple's kicked this off in their own way, and then Samsung is going to follow suit. And of course, LG needs to follow suit. If that means a stereoscopic camera for better 3D mapping, I'm fine with it. But the question is about that third camera. And we've recently had an advertorial on Pocketnow, which pretty much discussed and outlined LG's mobile strategy for this year and moving forward to next year. Jules, maybe you can drop a link in
definitely.
In the
it's
shell
from
post as well.
Contributor Nick Gray.
No, actually, it's I'm going to drop you a link. So we'll have a link in the rundown, and you can see. I really think that LG is very much invested in AI. You can see most of their phones, or at least all of the flagship phones for the past 12 months, have the brand name "Thank You" added.
I don't mean to be too cynical about it, but
yeah, they're going all in this AI / connected / marketing thing, which is beyond marketing. Just don't think about the name "Thank You." It's a brand name which they came up with. Think about the concept. They are willing to bet a lot on AI moving forward, and they're willing to bet a lot on all of their LG consumer electronics, if you will, from TVs to refrigerators to washing machines, to be connected. So if that third camera tackles or answers an AI question, an IoT question in a meaningful way, then I'm totally fine with this, because this is where we are headed eventually. If it's going to be just another camera, now that LG has a telephoto lens, then maybe they will add a zoom lens. It still will answer some questions, but I don't think that is something which LG is looking for at the moment.
I mean, to be fair to every manufacturer, all of them are using 2017's hot buzzword of the year, artificial intelligence, to juice up, this aspect of the phone. Maybe it's to get more services or to detect scenes on a camera. Like they're using it, and to the point of abusing it. It's kind of insane how that has gone, and no wondering when or where this will go to next. But I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what the actual differentiator is here in terms of how LG uses its artificial intelligence.
What if there will come, and there's no doubt about it, there will come a manufacturer. There's just a question of who and when, who will manage to bridge the gap between AI and AR. AR, I know it's another buzzword. Everybody's using it. Apple has been embracing it for the past 12 months now, but there's nothing meaningful, nothing useful, at least to me and maybe to you. It's another thing to show off. But if somebody can manage to bridge the gap between AR, AI, and IoT in a way which enhances my life every day, beyond the fact that I'm pointing my camera towards my food and it says food or portrait, something which is really, really meaningful. Don't ask me what, because if I knew, I would be a billionaire now. I think that that's going to be a win for the company. And I think personally that this is where LG might be headed with the 3-camera setup on the back. On the front, it's pretty clear.
LG AR AI IoT. By the way, this podcast is not sponsored by Campbell's Alphabet Soup. Could you say hi to me for a sec? I know that you just hi to Peter for a second.
Hi, Peter.
Because he says, Peter Hayton, I'm with Anton on LG cameras. More cameras make a nice product, but we need value. Could this become like maybe the HTC One M8, which we all kind of feel like didn't really provide value with that dual camera? Or do you worry that there is a potential for all of these additional cameras to remove focus away from key areas such as battery life? Because if you can't get the fundamentals of a freaking smartphone right, then what right do you have of promoting, of driving all this R&D and like showing to us as actual advantages, actual differentiators?
I agree with Peter, and I will go even beyond what he said. I think that we are right now in a stage where in the industry, regardless if you're talking Samsung, Huawei, Sony, HTC, you name the manufacturer, and even beyond that, Apple, we've reached a point where smartphones are more or less equally fast. Processors are fast enough. Even last year's 835 or 840 is fast enough. Last year's Exynos is fast enough. We have 4, 6, or even 8 gigs of RAM. And thanks to Android and its implementation, battery life is good. Now, of course, it's not multiple day battery life, but most of the phones will probably give you a full day battery life. Having an extra camera will impact little on battery life because, let's be honest, the camera application, you're spending the least amount of time in it. You're probably spending time in your chat application, on your web browser, WhatsApp, instant messaging, email, and so on. You only use the camera when the camera only uses battery when you're inside a camera application. Having said that, if the third camera with its AI, AR, IoT implementation is something which is always on, which could be something interesting if it brings value to your life again, it's also something which they need to solve on the battery draining side of things. So, Peter, agree with you, yes.
So good value for the user, hopefully. What has proven to be a very bad value for some users of their MacBooks and MacBook Pros is the butterfly keyboard.
Don't mention it.
Oh boy. So we've talked about a little bit about this before, but it's just now this week it's come to a culmination. So Apple is finally, they're not admitting anything. They're just offering up a out of warranty free repair program for every MacBook and MacBook Pro model that has this keyboard with the butterfly switches, which are very thin scissor switches that use very it's like insect legs of plastic, basically, I guess.
You know that mechanism which goes like this.
Yeah, well, yeah, great for the listeners to do, but it's kind of scissors. Imagine scissors, yeah, but very, very thinned out. And like we've seen lots of reporting. I mean, Casey Johnston of the Outline has been a great sounding board on this in terms of her editorial and her kind of just keeping the spotlight on Apple on this, just going through even as a little speck of dust. And it's you would think that it's hard to get dust or crumbs or anything into very tightly compacted spaces, but unfortunately this has disabled many keyboards, and people have been complaining, and it looks like Apple is listening but not really apologizing for it. So I know that you're actually looking for a MacBook, or at least a Mac computer right now, Tony, and you actually have experience with one of these. Tell me about that.
Let me try to play, at least for a couple of seconds, the devil's advocate, because again, as a hardware manufacturer, just like with any other manufacturer, Apple is facing a real dilemma, which is to thin down, to improve, to make something better, thinner, faster, and so on. everything comes at a cost. Slimming down laptops means not only slimming down key components, but slimming down input devices as well. That being said, let me ask you something. Back in the day when we had those keyboards which had a key travel of at least half an inch, you could ruin even those if you say you spill some coffee on it or stuff gets behind the keys. So I think there's a valid question here, which goes, it could go both ways, both in Apple's favor and in against Apple. What's the line between a manufacturing / design fault and where is the user at fault for something going wrong or for something breaking? Because if you look at things in a bubble, that keyboard will probably last you for 10 years if you don't spill something on it, if you don't drop stuff in it. But on the other hand, Apple, for at least the price tag, the premium price tag that they are putting on these products, they should ensure, I'm not saying idiot-proof because that will be too much. They should ensure that at least on a day-to-day usage, on a regular scenario, their hardware stands the test of time, because things happen. You and I are basically media tech bloggers. I've seen most of tech bloggers working from trains, from parties, from phone booths, from parks, from restaurants, from coffee shops. Accidents happen. And to ruin something which costs $2,000 just because a breadcrumb ended up in the wrong place is, I think, a deal breaker for most. And I think that this is something which Apple is really trying to address right now. They're trying to save not necessarily the product line, but the perception about this product line. Because if things are indeed as the report claims, and we've seen reports usually exaggerate, I'm not saying it's exaggerated. I'm saying that there might be a possibility for it to be so. But if it's true, I'm saying that word of mouth is marketing, and bad marketing hurts products. So
yeah, there has to be a minimum acceptable life cycle for these kinds of products, and I don't see that
under normal usage scenarios.
Yeah, and being fair to the consumer also is that dust kind of is naturally occurring. It's one of those things that just happens to float on by sometimes. If you're
of course, what kind of dust are we talking about? Because if you're going to use your laptop in a coal mine, it'll probably render it useless. But the regular house dust or the regular city dust, I don't think that should be ever a problem, and I don't think it is a problem. You're probably talking about those foreign parts which are rather sizable, which you can actually see, which end up being there, as you said, breadcrumbs or anything else.
I mean, I don't have any experience with butterfly keyboards. I'm wondering how that gap is, but it has had enough consumer sentiment against it to have triggered some sort of reaction from Apple. So
I'm not sure whether this one I'm holding here is a butterfly keyboard, but this is the latest Apple keyboard. I don't see any way, and now also I don't have the latest generation MacBook. So if somebody has it and has this problem, please drop us a comment and let us know. But I don't see any way bigger parts ending anywhere in there, because there's no space. You can't get anything under the keys.
Yeah. And so this goes from the 2015 MacBook 12-inch models all the way through. They put it on everything at this point in terms of MacBooks and Mac Pros. So definitely write us in if you got any comments on this, and we'll move on to one of our kind of nightcaps for now. On
the recurring topics these past 10 years.
Past 10 years, it feels like the past forever in mobile technology. Apple versus Samsung is settled. Okay, so last week. Well, yeah, but I think this is it. They've settled it in term. It's not another verdict that can be appealed. It's not something that has to go under a jury again. Like, freaking Samsung made an appeal on its $539 million damages verdict just last week, and this all stems from phones. Apple says that Samsung violated, infringed upon design patents that related all the way back to the iPhone,
the first orders, yeah.
Galaxy S2. it's kind of amazing that that we're still looking at this. So, I want any quick eulogy on this because we don't know the terms of the settlement, but we know that it's over.
Back when I was a news editor, I wrote at least one story a week about this Samsung versus Apple, Apple versus Samsung, and with the risk of repeating myself, even though I will try not to do so, I would ask you just one question. How many ways are there to design a phone nowadays? And a follow-up question, or even a question which is going to try to help you in answering that. No, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to help you. I'm really curious about your response. How many ways can you design a smartphone? Say you're Samsung. Is there any way you can design a phone which Apple at one point can say you're copied it from me?
I mean, we're going back to 2011, 2010.
It doesn't matter. The old phones had buttons back then on the front, and they had a screen, they had an earpiece, they had an
Like
LED.
if you're engaging in a staircase, you could have a circle screen. Like I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways. I'm not sure. Like they had an explicit freaking design pattern that covered. It was just art. Like every descriptive piece of it in text, it just referred to the art. It was self-evident that this is what an iPhone looks like. This is what a colorful grid of icons looks like. This is what freaking slide to unlock looks like, which got thrown out and maybe invalidated. There's a whole we found out a whole bunch of stuff along the way here over the past 7 years, but like I don't think I don't think it was an argument worth having. I think in the end, what we got down to was, the Supreme Court. It got all the way up to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court tossed it back and said, "Okay, so what is the article of manufacture that this patent applies to? The parts of the product or the whole of the product?" And that should determine damages. Now you go and figure that out, you guys. So I mean, I think that was the biggest question that we were left with.
I am an Apple fan, but I'm not a fanatic Apple fan. I use an Apple computer. I used an iPhone. Now I'm using Android. So I'm trying to say this as gently as I can. I think that this is a non-issue. I think that Apple exaggerated with this lawsuit, and they dragged it along just enough for it to make enough buzz. They didn't do it for the money. They didn't do it for anything which is measurable in money. I think that this was a branding / marketing campaign which was dragged out for years and years and years, trying to create a certain mindset. Whether this was addressing current Apple users that, hey, we are so much better than Samsung / Android because they're copying us, or they were trying to address future Apple owners that, hey, regardless of your beloved Samsung, they copied from us. It doesn't really matter. And the fact that Samsung retaliated is just normal. It's common sense when you're being dragged. I'm not siding with Samsung here, nor am I siding with Apple. I'm trying to explain that this was maybe, in my opinion, a move from which both companies benefited because of the entire media talked about this and nothing else for the past 5 or 6 years. And beyond the fact that they spent millions and millions of dollars in taxes, in legal fees and attorney fees, those are just pocket change. When you come to look at the grand scheme of things, it was a huge and long marketing campaign on both sides, and I'm just glad to say it's over, at least for now, and on this particular lawsuit, because there's plenty other lawsuits, and there can always be another one.
A cynical but fair take on this. I mean, you're talking about Samsung, world number one in smartphones, and Apple, world number two. So, I mean, they. I'm not sure if they wanted that when they went into this lawsuit, but they got it. So,
Oh, they
congratulations
played
to
along.
them. All right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll come right back with more news of the week. Stay tuned. Introducing Huawei MateBook X Pro, winner of 27 awards at Mobile World Congress, including Best of Show Laptop, Best Innovation, Best Design, editor's choice, and reader's choice. With Windows Hello, you can unlock your Huawei MateBook X Pro with a touch of your fingerprint. Secure, fast, and no password to remember. Huawei MateBook X Pro, now available at Microsoft stores, Amazon, and Newegg.com. For a limited time, get a free $300 gift card with purchase. Visit a Microsoft store near you today. And we are back with some more news of the week. Just wanted to cover a couple of comments regarding the keyboard issue, the butterfly keyboard on the MacBooks
Sure.
from Peter Hayton. That keyboard is indeed a butterfly switching keyboard, the one that you held up, Tony.
Mhm.
And does it have a lightning port? From what I have
Yeah, for
seen,
charging, yes, it does. It's
the MacBook has even less key travel than that keyboard, though.
there
So,
we
I
go.
mean, it does use the. So let me just hold it back up because I didn't get to. I was holding the phone
Hold on, hold
for the
on.
Twitter.
It's so thin that you have to just juggle with it. Let
Yeah,
me focus.
because from what he says, from what Peter says, is that there's even less travel on the MacBook. So, I mean, there's more room for error, more room for a disaster, and it's just. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not good. Yeah, so we have that, and also kind of another take on this from Renato Laporte. Consumer electronics giving up usability, durability, and repairability for the sake of design.
True. Nobody has ever said a bigger truth than this. Who was this commenter?
Renato Laporte, which he's from the Netherlands.
Mr. Laporte, you are spot on. There's a saying, if it never breaks, you're never going to get a new one. I mean, no company has, whether they're making smartphones, computers, even car manufacturers, if it never breaks, if something never goes wrong, you will never get a new one. Their intention is not to build a product which lasts your entire lifetime. Their intention is to build a product which fits the usual usage cycle, which could be 1 year, 2 year, 4 years, 5 years. But then again, something will eventually break. And Murphy said it, if something can break, it will eventually break. So they're just giving it the nudge.
That law is pretty peculiar, Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
We shall move on, though, and we're going to
By
talk
all
about
means.
Googly Google and the choices that you may have to make come this fall when we expect the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL to arrive. And I want you to take a look at the rundown link for this story. Take a look at the video, or not the video. Well, you can if you want, but more importantly, the pictures
The
that
picture.
you have to see, because these are renders from OnLeaks, Steve Hemmerstoffer, from about the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL, and they show both 2x1 displays or extra tall displays, but the XL is the one that has the notch, while the Pixel 3 standard one just sacrifices a little bit of bezel room for just a plain old display. Clean cut, nothing really happening over there. Both of them have dual cameras and the single camera at back, which we have. The single camera at back, we know Google has magic in terms of computational photography for them going, but that dual camera system at front, we're still kind of deciding what that is. So, in all of that, what do you think this choice offers if it's true?
Before we go into that conversation, I'm looking at the renders, and OnLeaks is usually spot on. Of course, Evan Blass is more spot on, but OnLeaks is spot on as well. If these
Don't mention
two,
them in the same sentence because you don't want the beef to be coming over here.
okay,
They beef on Twitter quite a lot. So.
okay, I should be on Twitter more. So I apologize if I offended anybody. What I'm saying is, if the phones which Google is going to put out on the market will be anything like these two I'm looking at right now, they're both really, really ugly. And this is just my personal assessment. Let me tell you why. I'm a huge fan of minimizing bezels, not going ridiculous about the lack of bezels, but minimizing them to a point where it does not impede normal usage. I'm probably not going to be okay with a full screen phone. Given that the entire reason behind the notch, and this is one of the things I criticized Huawei for the P20 Pro for, the reason behind the notch is to minimize or kill the top bezel, or to give you the most amount of screen real estate possible. Now, if you look at the pictures that I'm looking at right now, you have a minimal bezel at the top, and you have a huge bezel on the bottom. I'm trying to zoom into the picture, and I can see a line there. It might be a front-facing speaker. It might be something else. I'm not saying it's not okay to have a button, or it's not okay to have a front-facing speaker. I'm saying it kills symmetry. Now, in the case of the smaller Pixel, which doesn't have the notch, it has huge bezels top bottom, but at least it's symmetrical. But in the case of the Pixel 3 XL, it's asymmetrical, and hopefully they will come with an option to just conceal the notch somehow. And now, after this long intro, for which I apologize for, back to your question, I think that the entire topic, the entire debate behind the notch is a non-topic. It's a non-issue. The notch is a non-issue. You'll get used to it eventually, and it won't even take you that long to get used to it. Aside from Apple, most manufacturers are giving you options to conceal the notch. If you don't like to have those devil's horns on the right and left side of your display, you can just conceal them with a black band, which comes optional within your settings, and you only have floating text on a black bar on top, which is perfectly fine. Again, the reason behind the notch is to give you the most amount of screen real estate. And even if it's 40 or 50 or whatever pixels wide, it's still gives you more real estate for the applications to stretch the canvas as much as possible. So in my personal opinion, the notch is a non-topic. It's a non-issue, and the conversation about the notch has to go away because the notch is here to stay.
Yeah, and I guess I'll play the devil's advocate this time, because if you're watching movies and you're kind of you're given the option to either crop or zoom in, or maybe just view it as it is. Like, I don't want to be seeing all those black space. I already have to deal with the freaking letterboxing just from the 2x1 content that has been well, not 2x1 content, but the 16:9 in a 2x1 screen, or whatever the aspect ratio. The problem is that there's more black space, and it's growing, and it if I really want to have an unrestricted view of whatever I'm viewing, regardless of it being an app for pictures or just reading space, like there's just a whole bunch of odd like odd crevices that I feel like don't offer me anything in terms of the experience. So
let me counter that, and I'm glad to say that finally Android is one step ahead of Apple when it comes to this. It's only on the iPhone 10 where a full screen YouTube video has the cutout, if you look at it landscape, because of the notch. Because in the case of the P20 Pro, or in the case of the G7 ThinQ, when you do conceal the notch and the software applies a black or transparent PNG on the top of the screen, that is basically your canvas. And if you flip it landscape, it won't have the cutout for the notch. The content will stop where the notch stops, so that will give you a rather symmetrical full screen landscape view with the bottom notch on the bottom on the right side, and with the cutout being completely ignored on the left side.
I mean, you tell that to our super enthusiasts that are in our audience here, and it's kind of a moot point. But it's tough. I totally understand it. It's like I'm the same. Like, I don't really, as long as I'm able to see it and with a very decent amount of resolution and size, like, I'm perfectly fine for it. But it's just sometimes you want to be able to. They want to push the whole illusion of like, oh, this is a window on the world to something that you can't reach, but it's like I don't know. Well, I mean, it's your choice, your opinions. Sound in #PN Weekly on Twitter, and we'll try and see if we can answer it. Because
can we just make a short 5-minute or 2-minute brain exercise? Like, if you were to design, or any of our listeners were to design a smartphone which would eliminate the notch but still maximize the entire display and I'm specifically referring to the top, how would it be? Because there are physical constraints.
Yeah,
Regardless of
there's
what you do,
display connector at the bottom that is the necessity for the chin. It has to connect back to the motherboard, so it has to fold.
I'm not even
Under
going
the
to go that far. I'm going to just stop at the top where you have an earpiece, which you have to have. You have a webcam, which you have to have. And you will probably have a light sensor, proximity sensor. And in some models, you will also have an LED flash. Now, where do you put these 5 pieces of hardware in order to eliminate the notch and still maximize the real estate? Putting them on the bottom, people tried it. It didn't work. So is there any other option, or at least I don't see any other option until technology gets that far or that good where you can just simply put a webcam or an earpiece behind your screen and then there's no problem. They put fingerprint scanners behind the screen. Why couldn't they just put the webcam or the earpiece? Even the earpiece was completely eliminated by Xiaomi, I
with
think, 2 years
bone
ago.
conduction, yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, they're getting their way there, but it's like they're imperfect. Some of them are imperfect solutions because I've experienced a bone conduction where it's like, oh, some people can actually hear my call from my vibrating cheek or something.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I'm totally, it's weird, I know, but I want to move on because otherwise we'd be sucked into talking about this all day. If you're commenting, please print out a certificate and take a picture of it of your hardware engineering degree. Let's move on. With the Sony Xperia XZ2 Premium going up for pre-orders July 9th. I'm talking to Tony here, a fallen away Sony fan who I get, loves Apple now, or I guess has always loved Apple, but has always had a soft spot for.
I love all phones. What are you saying? I'm using a Huawei P20 Pro as my daily driver.
All right, fair, but we always cast you as that Sony kind of, back in the old days when it was very underappreciated, and then I still think it's pretty underappreciated. We heard the news this week of Sony Mobile pulling out of maybe Turkey, Africa, and Middle East markets. Kind of sad,
losses.
but do you think they'll be generating more losses this time around? Because this is the first. I hate to think about it like this, but this is the first price increase for its characteristic 4K phone. And the premium line has always been, there's been 2 previous ones, the Z5 and then the XZ Premium. But we got 4K HDR on the XZ Premium. Now it's basically remained the same. And then the rest of the phone is kind of like, well, we're going to upgrade that with this, camera, slow motion, or whatever the heck. And it's going to be $1,000. That's a 25% increase from previous models. What's up? What's going on?
So there's 2 ways we can tackle this. The difference between the Z5 Premium and the XZ2 is $200. The question is a faster processor, is a secondary camera, and a back-mounted fingerprint scanner worth $200? I don't think so. But at the same time, we've been knowing Sony, and I've been, as you said, a Sony fan, and I've been following Sony since the early days. You'll have to take over just for a couple of seconds.
Sure, definitely. In terms of talking about a whole bunch of improvements that we saw from the Xperia XZ2, we're talking about 960 full HD slow motion, ISO 51200 for photo taking, which is pretty amazing. Of course, there's always that Snapdragon upgrade that you have to consider because that's one of the bigger cost run-ups in terms of that. But I think perhaps this may prove out true, but the display, because we've seen kind of this pricing war, this cold war of displays of OLED and LCD, and just being able to get up to quad HD levels without having it break the bank. And there is some competition in the OLED market right now, but in terms of that 4K, that very niche area for Sony, there hasn't been much many waves to talk about there, so they're kind of left alone and having to support that. But for that to justify a $200 price increase, I I don't know if it's fair to compare that to the iPhone 10. We're dealing with a lot of the same prestige modeling going on here, but you're getting Face ID, you're getting a much more robust system of apps, or a much more robust system of features that go along with the hardware provided. And it's just, well, I don't know. Sony is kind of, getting their stuff together. They're kind of mounting their sand, but they don't have a. I feel like they don't have a castle yet for that sand.
You're a hero, Jules. I apologize. This is what happens when you podcast at 8 p.m. from your home office and there's pizza delivery at your door. So I apologize. Coming back to what I was saying, I've been following Sony since the really early days, and Sony has always been a company, just like Apple, which was not afraid to charge a premium just because of its brand, just because it has Sony on it. The same way Apple charges for the Apple logo, Sony is charging for the Sony logo. And it would be an understatement to say that the two companies are not doing the same thing, because we know that Apple and Sony were, I'm not saying really close, but Steve Jobs was always finding inspiration from Sony products. So there's that. Sony can charge whatever they want for a premium smartphone. Does that smartphone deliver? Does the smartphone differentiate itself enough to justify that $1,000 price point? To some, it might. To some, I mean, there's the iPhone 10. Let's be honest, the iPhone 10 is not worth its price tag. So we are in an era where smartphone manufacturers create niche products which become status quos, which become status symbols. If you don't want to have a $1,000 phone to show off, we have cheaper phones as well. But if you afford it, or if you want to be able to show off that you are rocking a $1,000+ phone, we have that option as well.
It's an aspirational product.
Exactly. It's something which you are not afraid to pull out in public or place on your table, and people will immediately know that you're a huge snob.
And if you're all right with that, then you can go ahead and continue eating that caviar right there.
Absolutely, but nonetheless, Sony flagships were always great, exceptional phones. I always held Sony close to my heart, despite of all their efforts in trying to shoot themselves in the foot, starting from the lack of US availability to US availability without the fingerprint scanner, and all the other problems which they faced during the years, especially the headphone volume and other multimedia stuff. Sony phones are solid phones. So yeah, if I win the lottery and Sony doesn't send me an XZ2 for review, I will probably buy that phone because one, I'm a Sony fan, two, it looks good, and three, it's a Sony product. So Sony product. I'm not saying Samsung or Huawei are less premium products when it comes to build, when it comes to quality, when it comes to performance. I'm saying that having a Sony phone, a Sony flagship, in my book, at least for me personally, means something to me.
Totally fair. I agree in terms of the whole evaluation of how Sony has tripped over itself over time. But, recently they've rebuilt themselves. They've gotten focused with that X or XZ, whatever they want to do with that branding.
Yeah.
And, kind of built it up and involved their design. It's something that needed to be done. I feel like they're following a trend, whether it's ill-advised or not, of, prestige pricing. But I feel like, if they don't follow, then it's kind of
I'm looking at the render from the article you linked. It's beautiful. I was there in Barcelona this year. I saw the presentation. I saw the phone, but just looking at it, it is beautiful. Now, you can, of course, argue about the huge bezels, which is a signature of Sony, and they should ditch it. That you can argue that the Samsung, the Huawei, the HTC, the you name it, looks better, but it is a really nice looking phone, at least to me.
Couple more stories here as we wrap up the show, talking about OnePlus perhaps coming to the US with carriers. We already know that they sell unlocked to what, 33-ish markets around the world, and they've recently started moving into Europe. O2 in the UK has been a partner for a couple of years, but more of that seems to be happening. There's some momentum going on, and Pete Lau, in a recent interview, says that he might be able to bring something to U.S. carriers by next year when 5G rolls around. And of course, they're on the Qualcomm train, so you got to say they obviously have the inside track on this. But whether or not they're able to pull off all they want, all what Pete Lau wants, is a question here, because he says that there's going to be no bloatware, and if there's anything that a small brand would like to push, and if there's anything that a carrier can hold over that brand's head, it's going to be preloaded software, whatever, vouching whatever services they have, be it AT&T, DirecTV Now, or whatever the heck their plan is these days, because they keep updating it like 5 times a week, or Verizon, which has its which recently actually announced it's shutting down Go 90, its own streaming services, but they still have a whole bunch of these stupid like GPS navigation services, which they still do. It's kind of weird, but I'm wondering how realistic you think um, Lau's goals are here.
Being in this business for more than 10 years in the tech journalism sphere gives me also the opportunity to be some sort of analyst, even though I hate that word. But I have an analytical view of what is happening in the industry. And I've learned to see beyond what companies are trying to say behind the words. To be honest, I don't think that OnePlus really stands a chance unless they manage to get some carrier backup. Bear with me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as of the OnePlus 5, so 3 generations ago, we are at 6 now. It was the 5T, and then back starting from the 5, it was no longer about giving you a flagship killer at an affordable price. The prices of these phones went higher and higher with every iteration, up to a point where, yes, you do get more bang for your buck, but that buck is still going to burn a hole in your pocket. Now, I'm not saying that OnePlus is suffering in terms of revenue, income, turnover, or units sold. They are steadily growing. But name one company which doesn't want to grow even more. And with the prices of their phones going higher and higher, which is both a trend in the market and also because of the prices of the components, it doesn't really matter why. A more expensive phone will probably sell less units, but even if it sells the same amount of units or somewhat more units, your revenues will be higher. But why not sell 2 or 3 times as much by having a carrier subsidize your phone? And we know very well that in the United States, if you are not a carrier, if you are not a manufacturer which has a deal with a carrier, you basically are going to fail to succeed. Apple is always releasing its phones on carriers, and only then 2 or 3 or 4 months down the road offering you an unlocked option. So Huawei had real huge problems even before the ban because no carriers were there to support it. Now OnePlus might sell millions of smartphones in the US for those who are willing to pay outright $500, $600, $700. But what if you could pay those $600, $700 in 12 or 24-month installments? Or why wouldn't your carrier subsidize half of it, which automatically makes your phone more accessible to the masses? And I think that this is going to be the name of the game for OnePlus moving forward. They proved themselves. We know they can make exceptional smartphones. Sadly, it comes with a cost. Like I said, every smartphone in the past 3 years or 2 years from OnePlus is getting more and more expensive. They're trying to counter this by concealing some of the costs, which you will be paying for, of course, but you will be paying for it in installments to your carrier. It'll be cheaper on a pay-per-month basis, so it means it will be more accessible to people. That's what I think. That's what I'm taking out of all this.
Totally. And he also mentions that, hopefully that he is able to get more hands-on experiences at the carrier stores, which
absolutely
a lot of people, a lot of families still go over to the carrier store to feel out what they want for their next upgrade. So
having a
and that's
carrier
totally
store or a pop-up store, and even within a carrier store, the placement of your products and the dedication of the sales crew, of the sales team,
every
can
little
make
detail matters.
can make or
You know,
break a product.
skips and everything. Yeah. And I just, you know, I mean, OnePlus, the latest carrier to, not carrier, OEM to, it's like the Chinese OEMs are feeling like there's an added sense of urgency to move to the US to grow and, you know, hit one of the most valuable markets in smartphones, because Xiaomi is talking about it. They're saying that, again, 2019-ish is what they're saying. Huawei and tried, and it couldn't because
ZTE
apparently
as well.
ZTE as well. The government, Donald Trump doesn't really like them. They sort of like them. They don't like them. I don't know what's going
You know,
on.
without going
But
into politics, because I hate politics, and you don't have to be from Romania, Hungary, Europe, the US to hate politics. We all hate politics. But here's a question: how will this new administration's policy affect other Chinese manufacturers? I mean, you cannot, or at least in my book of common sense, you cannot discriminate between one Chinese manufacturer or two, Huawei and ZTE, and another Chinese manufacturer, OnePlus or Xiaomi. Of course you can, because you're a politician, but judging by common sense, either you are going to say the same speech and you're going to apply the same measure to all players in the market, or you're going to differentiate and you're going to introduce some sort of arbitrary decisions. This is just a rhetorical question. I'm saying that OnePlus might or might not have the same problems Huawei and ZTE have been facing in the past 12 months.
I mean, it's all been tactical in the trade. You know, I guess we could call it a trade war in terms of China and the United States.
Yeah, just double the taxes.
Yeah, exactly. Steel, agriculture, smartphones, and you know, they're actually the recent tariff application from the U.S. The U.S. side talks about PCBs and whatnot. So, and that's in pretty much every single electronic. So,
including apples.
We're paying for it. That's
politics.
Yeah. Okay, that way to take the wind out of that one. But anyways, let's bring ourselves back up and let's find something that we can laugh and point at.
I don't want to laugh. I want to spend $2,000 on this phone. I really want to spend more than I would spend on a niche Porsche designed smartphone.
$2,000 for a Snapdragon 845 phone, and it's not even that. It's the Asus Zenfone 5Z. It was kind of like one of the first like big announcements that Qualcomm wanted to make, saying that it's the first one. Yeah, $1,999 this starting price says, and that you should subscribe now in order to get notified of when it's going to launch. The problem is, you scroll down the side just a little bit, and then you find stuff here. I think Asus's Zenfone 3 looks and feels twice its price. Asus Zenfone 3 crams plenty of great features into a new glass-clad chassis. These are all reviews. They're videos, links to videos, and the thumbnails of those videos are showing off Zenfone 3 material, which launched back in 2016. So, man, I mean, if this isn't a mistake, if this isn't like someone that was like too lazy to like cut from their copy paste file, like, come on, man.
I'm looking at the official Asus page, which is sourced in our article, which seems
They've updated it.
Yeah, it seems nice and it seems finally finished. I'm okay with companies doing minor mistakes if they're innocent mistakes. Somebody somewhere didn't do their job. They probably, I don't know, got fired or not. I don't think this is such a huge issue. The Asus in general and the Zenfone 5 is an awesome phone. Is it a $2,000 phone? Of course not. Did somebody make a mistake? Was somebody lazy? Did somebody not push the update or publish button? Absolutely. But I think that the entire media, us included, up to this point, we're making too big of a deal out of this.
Yeah, totally. And maybe it's going to be like between $650 and $800, something like that. But it's like that's beyond the point. I want
You and I were in Barcelona when they launched this phone.
Yep, yep. And it was. I don't know if they gave a euro value for this
I
phone
don't
because I
think
know.
so. I don't remember.
Yeah,
But it's a
but
good phone. I'm talking to the fact that it's a great phone. It's not a $2,000 phone, but it's right there in the $600 to $700 price tag.
I guess if you're gonna support your device, you gotta support it in marketing. You don't promote the Zenfone 3 when you're trying to promote the Zenfone 5Z, and you got to make sure that this kind of stuff, because if anything, if you're a tech company, you have a web presence, and that's the most important to maintain. So, come on, do better, Asus. Next time,
Jules,
please.
in the past, let's say only 3 years, how many press releases slash launches slash official wordings with mistakes, honest or not, planned or not, have you seen on average?
I don't know, man. It too many to count on my hands. So I'll
So
say that.
I say it's an honest mistake and we should move on without trying to cut this hangout short.
Well, totally. Just a couple more PN Weekly talkers here from
I
Mike
love those.
Beard. Yeah, totally. Do we even really care about having absolutely no bezel? The S9 looked perfectly fine to me. Just move the fingerprints under to the middle of the back and we're good. Tony and I would say, are in agreement with you, Mike. And I guess there are definitely some complications as to where that fingerprint sensor could be placed. There's been a whole bunch of
Let
talk
me give
about
you
jigsaw puzzling the components. Yeah, go ahead.
behind the screen.
Yes. Andrew Wallace, Sony should honestly bring on the go streaming of PlayStation content to their devices.
Word.
Yes.
Yes.
Steam Link is not enough. I love you, Valve, but more, please.
Yes.
And also fix your freaking crossplay issues, man.
Well, by the way, didn't Microsoft have the same problem with the Xbox and Windows Phone?
Yeah, and but like I get like Fortnite. I don't know if you've heard about this online game called Fortnite, but
no,
yeah.
I've been living in a bubble.
Well, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's the biggest thing to blow up since I don't know, PUBG or whatever. Like there's been one thing after the other.
Pokemon.
Pokemon, yes, yes, indeed. And they like the Microsoft Xbox account was like tweeting at the Nintendo Switch account because Nintendo Switch recently announced that freaking Fortnite was available to play for free online right now, and they were like, "Oh, the wonderful things we can build together," because they're able to cross-play with each other, but not Sony. I don't know what's up with that. So, damn it, do better. And a couple more, two more. The problem with OnePlus, Renato Laporte says, is that every phone, with the exception of the Pixel and iPhone, will drop prices like crazy after a few months of release. Here in the Netherlands, you can buy already a OnePlus with 3 of the 4 major carriers, but still a niche device, which again goes to how much progress they've made, but it's still kind of your point about emphasis about staffers and placement and whatnot, just getting into how much encouragement
there's love and hate. There's I'm not sure, let me check who was this person who commented this. It was Renato. Yeah. So there's a love and hate relationship with commenters, which are smart, and I love them because they not only think the same way we do, they are unbiased and well-rounded enough to draw the same conclusions. But when a commenter states an absolute truth, you, as a podcast host or guest or co-host,
bow down.
Yes, it's checkmate. You have nothing to say. Like, you're right. That's it.
Done. And one more from Peter Hayton. Do you think that there could be more benefit from the growth of OnePlus pop-up stores rather than expanding into carrier store? Because if people see something different in their city, might they not be better reminded of this new brand than what they saw
Pop-up
in carriers?
stores cost a lot. They
cost a lot. Xiaomi has been very crazy in terms of they opened a 24-hour store in Moscow. So, and that is not no small change involving that.
Unless you're Samsung, and you can buy, rent, or lease real estate right across the street from every or most major Apple store for your own pop-up store, unless you have billions of dollars or euro. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And well, I was just about to say they only have like the two, like two or three stores that are like major experiences around the U.S. And again, they are the number two or number one name, depending on who you ask in terms of smartphones. So it's like
Your
it's dissonance.
your best bet is to strike a deal with a carrier, and that carrier already has brick and mortar stores. That carrier always has phones on display because it's a carrier. They want to sell you the phone so that you can use their services. So if you strike a deal, your best bet is to strike a deal with a carrier and have a small corner or a big corner, depending on how much you're willing to cut their check, just for them to display and promote your product. But that is the cheapest and most effective option, whether it's in the States, in the EU, Asia, or anywhere else.
And if you're an informed tech reader like you are, thank you for listening and viewing the Pocketnow Weekly. You could always just go unlocked and have the freedom and the edge and the power to do whatever you want. And if there's anything that we like to do here, it's empowering you to make your own decisions.
More financial power to you guys.
Indeed. And that is it for this week. Tony, again, thank you for joining me and in discussing this week's news. And,
as always, a real pleasure. And I'm always saying that I don't have time. I always make time. So, Jules, please bring me along more often. This was fun.
Well, definitely. And thank you again for listening and watching us here on YouTube or wherever else that you're listening to us. Be sure to keep the conversation going by emailing us podcast@pocketnow.com. We really want to hear the thoughts you want to get out and the questions that you want answered. Also, we're all on Twitter, #PNWeekly for one. Anton Dinaj is at ANTOND NAGY, and I am at Point Jules. Pocketnow is at Pocketnow on Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, and YouTube, where you can find the Pocketnow daily every weekday with Jaime Rivera. We also have a lovely site, pocketnow.com, for all your mobile tech news needs. We'd certainly appreciate reviews and ratings on Apple Podcasts or wherever you happen to be streaming us. For the team, I'm Jules Wong, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.